Okay, good day everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Rami Ramaha with Gigamart, and have with me here Stefan and David from Shell Oil. Shell Oil is a customer of Gigamart and deployed our visibility and analytics fabric. They walk us through the challenges they face in their network and how they solve that challenge with the Gigamon Visibility and Analytics Fabric. During their session, please put your questions in the chat window and we will address them during the presentation as well as after the session. David, take it away.
Well, great. Thank you for the introduction. I want to congratulate the attendees with us. It's been a long day. If you're here, if you're like me, I've been trying to fit in as many of the sessions as I could between other things for work. The good thing is a lot of this stuff's going to be recorded, so we'll have access to it later on for the things that we missed. Some of the key themes that we've heard today has been the value of visibility in a world that's getting more complex. So that's going to be kind of our story as well. And we'll talk a little bit about how we have addressed some of that in our journey as the complexity has gotten, higher for us as well. And then later on in the presentation, we'll do a demo of what we think is an interesting use case, leveraging the Netflow Gigasmart capability for looking at a certificate expiry as a way to watch for certs that are expiring for our apps. So I've called this a tale of two strategies because we have actually changed kind of our strategic approach to visibility during our time as we've been a customer of Gigamon. So we've been with Gigamon for about 10 years. And over that 10 years, we've seen a lot of change. We've seen changes in the actual platforms themselves. We've seen growth in terms of the ability to use visibility for more than just raw packets, packet forwarding, but actually getting intelligence from packets. And so this is a bit about our story. So what I'll be doing is kind of walking us through a little bit about what Shell looks like, kind of a nostalgic look at the good old days and what that meant. And then kind of as things have gone on, what's changed for us that's caused us to rethink some of our original strategy and then how we've dealt with that. So let's go ahead and dive straight in. Shell is a pretty big country or a company. We are in a bunch of countries. We're about 100 years old, a little bit over that. One of the things that is apparent is that we have lots of people in lots of places. We're kind of divided half and half between people who are contractors and those that are staff. We have here kind of a list of the number of retail outlets that we have. And one of the things that we're proud of is that we have more retail outlets than Starbucks. And so that's a point of pride for us. We are obviously in the crude oil, but one of the things that's really interesting is from a company perspective, really, instead of being an oil company, we're more of a natural gas company now. So over 50% of our revenue comes from natural gas nowadays. And we're very, very kind of committed to the priorities around driving down CO2. And you're going to be seeing and hearing more about that in the media in the next couple of quarters as Shell makes some interesting announcements. So we have a lot of small sites, but then some bigger sites. And so we have about 100 sites that have 300 people or more, and then a bunch of smaller sites sprinkled around the world. And we have kind of 10 major global data centers, but then also a bunch of other kind of sites where we have computer rooms and other things. And so the key message here is large and complex. And one of the strategies that we had when we started was to use our budget and really focus on the Big 10 as a way to get visibility kind of for the front door of those data centers, to be able to share data for people coming to those data centers where most of the apps were hosted. Operationally, we're structured in kind of an interesting way. We're highly outsourced. So both the networks, our data centers, and our end user compute platforms are all outsourced. And one of the challenges that we had early on was how was it that we go about doing incident resolution when we have three different organizations all claiming that their stuff is fine and that it's somebody else's fault. And so we created an organization called Core Ops that basically is composed of representatives from all of the three vendors. So we get kind of all of the liars into a single room, and then we also have incident managers in the regional data centers, and then we do have a global NOC that sits in India. Um, so let's look back at the good old days. What were the good old days? Well, the good old days were when you had users that would come across a private network to a data center for their stuff. And some of the attributes of the good old days were that you would have most of your apps provisioned from central data centers. A lot of our apps were thick apps where you had clients, but over time that became more of a web-based platform. And then for those apps that we really couldn't put onto a web, or maybe were legacy apps that weren't WAN friendly, we used Citrix for that. It was a single corporate network, and it was always the network fault if you're the app people. And part of our initial motive for getting into some of this work was to be able to get intelligence and visibility in the network so we could clearly prove when it was and wasn't the network. And then for us, it actually also meant centralized internet gateways. So we had three global gateways that were out there for internet. And that's back when internet was a luxury. And back in the good old days, that meant several things from a visibility perspective. For us, we had kind of a watch the front door mentality. And so, put visibility in the front of your data center for your user traffic from sites, and then put visibility in the backside of your data center for the internet, and you're good to go. And that worked for a while, but for us, obviously, and like many of you, that has changed. Um, and the other thing of it is, we had limited budgets early on, and we still have limited budgets, but we had a tight budget, and so we wanted to get the biggest bang for our buck, and so that's where we said, fine, let's go ahead and watch these key choke points as a way to, get the most value. And of course, we were in the data sharing game. The folks in security soon found out we had great visibility, and like a bunch of leeches, they came and started tapping into our stuff, literally. And so it's become kind of a shared facility for us for the enterprise. Well, uh, times have gone on. We started off with kind of a few central data centers, and then we had um, phone services that were added, and then we added other data centers in the regional, then mail, then of course AWS, and then we brought in Azure cloud services. Then we expanded over to AP, and we put a cloud services in AP. And then, of course, we went with Zscaler as our means to really go towards a strategy of local internet breakout, and then do cloud services for our security layer. And so in the end, we're now in a world that's very, very different from where we started. And it's a world that many of you can identify with, where apps are no longer hosted in the central data centers. They're out on the internet. And our users, the internet's no longer a luxury, it's essential. And it's also, in many cases, a mobile user force. And more so now than ever with the COVID scenario where all of us are at home. And so here, you may see some familiar names of things that you guys consume for cloud services, whether it's 365 or Workday, ServiceNow, Salesforce, or maybe SAP HANA for the cloud. And so that's kind of us. And so, we have challenges that come with this new reality. And you've heard all day around the new complexity that comes with hybrid estates, where you have public and private cloud, you have SaaS, and you have a mobile workforce, or some people call it a nomadic workforce. And so a question is, how does the current world, how do we deal with visibility now? And one of the nice stories, if you've been attending different sessions, is that as the world has changed, Gigamon has changed as well, and added capability for visibility in cloud, um, and the threat insights piece is adding to kind of the portfolio for capabilities. The Gigasmart stuff, which we'll do an interesting little show and tell, but you've been seeing the value of Gigasmart and actually getting intelligence from the network, not just packets. And so for us, we have a very, very distributed workforce. On March 7th, we had 86,000 people go home. And the key things that our leaders were asking is, where are my people? How are they connecting? And are they being productive? And so our visibility between packets and network visibility and also agents that we have on all of our PCs, we were able to answer key questions for our leadership in a time of crisis. We also have this scenario where transport is mixed. It's not the same. We have internet, we have private networks. Sometimes you have multiple private networks. SD-WAN is kind of the new thing, of course. For us in Shell, we're at a time right now where actually we're insourcing our telecom from AT&T finally and making plans towards doing SD-WAN towards the end of next year. And so that may be something that's on the horizon for many of you as well. And so a big challenge is all this stuff is happening, but we still have a legacy out there, a heritage where we can't completely get away from data center centric visibility. And so there will continue to be important assets that sit centrally where we need to leverage the existing investment, but we're forced to actually make some adjustments to our strategy. And so the key thing, the tale of two cities, is visibility now is following users and applications. And as the user community has changed, and as our hosting platforms for application has changed, the necessity for visibility changes has also come. So for us, we have, moved more visibility into our big facilities and our big offices, so we can see both the local internet egress and ingress, as well as traffic back to the core data center. And so I guess that's the kind of the key headline here for us is visibility really, really needs to follow where the apps are and the users. And this becomes kind of an interesting challenge for all of us as complexity in our world goes up and our leaders still want it to be solid as a rock. So we're going to jump now into what we think is a fun use case. And it's all about how we leverage the Gigamon Visibility Fabric to not just see packets, but also to extract data around certificate expiry and using the Netflow capability with Gigasmart. So I don't want to steal all of Stefan's thunder. Let me bring Stefan Diekmeyer on stage. And Stefan, if you would, go ahead and take it away and tell us about the work that we did with the certs and also an introduction to our Fabric Manager.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave, for this excellent introduction. So I've shared my screen. This is our live environment that we're looking at right now. And as Dave highlighted all the way at the beginning, where we still used the Gigamon G series, one of the things that got the attention from cyber defense is that there was no longer a need for them to buy their own tabs, buy their own equipment, and all sorts of other things. So one of the things they figured out is, if we give you guys some money, then together we can share it. And so one of the things we always say to anybody looking at anything Gigamon is that the initial motto or mantra that they had, the capture once and share many, that's really literally what got us from A to B, and basically from the legacy times to the times where we are right now. So as David highlighted, we have a follow the user strategy. And the reason obviously for that is that for us, it doesn't matter right now if the user would use a legacy application that's hosted inside the data center, or if they would use a cloud-based application, or if they break out over their local internet connection. So we want to be able to figure out what users are doing pretty much any given time, wherever they are. And this turned out to be a very effective strategy Now, in most countries, we have these COVID-19 lockdowns or, work from home policies. I believe that most of the people are affected by that. And in our case, the good thing was that it enabled us, because we also tap into our VPN solutions. Even if people would log on to their local offices or larger offices where they have regional IT breakouts, we would still be able to see what the users are doing. So from a visibility perspective, we haven't really lost a lot of visibility with regards to COVID-19. That said, we have a large and flat estate. That means we don't have a lot of the HE3s, but we do have a lot of appliances distributed around there. And one of the key things we have to manage the estate is Fabric Manager. And so we've been using it ever since, I think it was version 3 or 3.5, somewhere all the way at the beginning. And we really love it. The way the features have been extended and expanded, and the way we can do more and more with it. And so what you're seeing here right here is the live dashboard. I just logged onto it of traffic we see right now currently live in the network. We look at this in Shell on a daily basis to figure out what's if the estate is up and running. Is everything okay? Are some of our ports down? Are some of our ports up? Are new network ports, did the network ports become down or up? If so, then we have to act on it if we don't want to lose visibility. So the port links you see up here is an important one. The packet drops and errors we see down here is an important one. The other widgets we currently use quite a lot is the software version. Over here you can see we're mainly running version 5.4, 5.7, and that's because in Shell we've opted to run the LTS software code. And in general, what happens whenever a new version is released, we test it first, we go through the whole release management cycle, then it's being deployed, and slowly but surely it's being changed. And over here you see the inventory that we have. And clearly you can see we have a very flat model. So we have a lot of HB ones and HE ones. They're really the workhorses of our visibility fabric. And we have some HE2s in some larger data centers. We have a lot of TA1s that we still need to replace. And over here you see one of the few TA10s that we have that have been replaced. And so let's go and look at a specific device. Right now I have this HE1 in a data center in Frankfurt. This recently we got a message that there were 2 ports down, and then somebody in the team goes to check out, okay, what's going on here? Why would these ports be down? Is a router, did a router fail? Did a tab fail? Has anything else happened? What's the generic status of the thing anyway? So on the left you can see the status of the device. It's working perfectly fine. You see the fans are good, the power is good, and the ports are down. That's what caught our eye initially anyway. And in our case, we can see port 7 and 8 are down. The reason turned out for port 7 and 8 that they're down is because there's an issue with the WAN link between these 2 data centers in Frankfurt, and so somebody put a loop on it and they took the tap out. So we simply don't see the traffic right now. So they're actively working this as we speak. It's 11:47 at night here in the Netherlands. So hopefully by tomorrow we will see 2 nice ports that are back up and running. The other thing that's interesting to see over here is the Gigasmart Operations that we're using. I'm sure you've all heard a lot about Gigasmart Operations throughout the day. There's 2 Gigasmart Operations that we in Shell really love, and we really use them quite a lot, actually everywhere where we can use them, and that's deduplication and Netflow. And the reason we use deduplication is that all the way initially when cyber defense came on board, they really wanted us to be able to right size our tooling. And now you don't necessarily need deduplication, but obviously you can do all sorts of filters in your maps to send the right data to the right tool. But then if you tap, for example, an internet link, the likelihood of you finding a lot of port 8443 or 8080 is going to be very high. And now if you tap on multiple links in the same data center, you'll see the same packet twice, meaning you will send too much data to the tool, which might overload the tooling. So we use dedupe quite extensively to prevent this issue. And the other one we use extensively nowadays is Netflow. And basically the Netflow license came up in a proof of concept because our internal PKI team, they approached us and they said, Stefan, Dave, we have a problem and we don't really know how to solve it. Maybe you guys can help. Maybe you have a clear understanding or an idea of where we could go to figure out how to tackle this. And the problem that they had is that, application groups in Shell, they sometimes use the internal PKI, and once they use the internal PKI, then it's very easy to track. You give them the certificate, you know when it's going to be expiring, and you can reach out to the same person if he's still doing the same role. Like your certificate's going to be expiring, you need to change it because otherwise there might be business impact. But one of the things they figured out is that there's more and more business impact because some application groups in Shell would go to an external party, DigiCert for example, buy their certificate there, put it on their application server, and lo and behold, it would work and it would all be fine. But nobody would know about it except for the application team themselves. And then, when they didn't track things properly, certificates would expire, and then we had business impact. And business impact in Shell is going to cost us money. So we decided to do this proof of concept with Gigamon on the usage of Netflow or IPFix to actually send this data. So hence you see the Netflow license over here. And if we go over here, you can see the SSL record, and I'll show you later on how it looks like. But basically we're sending certain details of the certificate when the data is live being intercepted by the GigaView appliance. It's forwarded to a regional heavy forwarder for Splunk, and then it's forwarded into our Splunk cloud. And basically what we generate is a dashboard that you see right over here. And this dashboard is based on live network data, on certificates and handshakes that we've seen live in the network. And all the way on the left, you'll see the name of the certificates, and all the way on the right, you see the expiration in days. Now, some of these are not Shell related at all, so we don't really care about them, but some of them could be related, like Phantom, for example, down here. It will expire in about 10 days. The team that we have, the internal PKI team, now has a capability of figuring out what is going to expire when, even when they're not involved in the certificate handling. And so the other interesting things we see over here are the certificate issuers. So you'll see DigiCert is right up there, the Shell Private Type 1 EU primary issuing CAs, some of our own issuing CAs. We see Microsoft, we see Entrust, we see some Amazon. And so IRM and cyber defense, they use this data as well. If there would be a compromise somewhere on, for example, a CA, then we can instantly figure out, build some queries in Splunk and figure out, hey, how many certificates do we see that are impacted? Or if a certain application is impacted, we can figure out how many people have actually used this application, because we just search on the certificate serial number, for example. The other interesting thing to see is everybody using Eclipse the Curve Diffie-Hellman or Diffie-Hellman? Most people are, some people are still not. You can see that right over here. And basically, the last one that's very interesting is how many self-signed certificates do we have? How many certificates are not signed by anybody and still, being used in secure communications? And so you see some of those down here. Some of them, they're more worrisome than others, but basically, in short, what we're using it for is to get live data from the network, dump it in Splunk, and then use Splunk enriched data to build dashboards and to build queries. And so we can do a query and see, which web server in Shell is still using SSL v3, for example, or web server, or anybody else who's still using SSL v3. Nobody should be using SSL v3. And this tool enables us to solve that challenge for them in the live network. So, very happy with the Netflow feature. Like I said, in FM, we use it extensively. We use it to deploy licenses. We use it to keep track of the health of our estate. We use it for pretty much anything that we need to keep our estate up and running. And so, working together with Gigamon solved this issue for us. And we're now actually in the next proof of concept with Gigamon, which is where we're testing threat insight to see, how much can we do with threat insight, and how much, can we leverage our existing Gigamon infrastructure to bring up any new capabilities on the same fabric, and get even more value out of the business for it. So that was our live demo.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Stefan. So this is the time for questions, if you have any. We have 5 minutes here before we close up our time. As Rami's mentioned here in the chat, I'll also be joining for the Ask the Experts session that's following this one. So be courageous and ask a question.
First of all, I want to thank you, David and Stefan, for really taking the time to talk about your use case, and Stefan walking through the demo. I think that was very helpful. And I think, personally, I think most of the folks on the bridge, the way David, you described your environment in terms of, especially through the pandemic that we had, you're no longer within the four walls of your corporation. You are now everywhere. And I like what you said. Follow the applications. Visibility needs to follow the application and the users. And I concur with that 100%. And I just want to highlight a couple of things. I know we do not have any specific questions at this point, but again, if you have anything that may come up at some point, feel free to join the Ask the Experts. And again, I think David doesn't want any hard questions, but I think if you guys do, go for it. And I'm sure you could leverage the Gigamon community as well if you have any questions for them to address.
Yeah, for sure.
And I just want to mention a couple more things. I know Stefan, you talked about Threat Insight. Folks who are not familiar with Threat Insight, it's the Gigamon. It's the equivalent of network detection and response platform, and it's Gigamon is about really bringing analytics into the visibility. So if you have not looked into Threat Insight, definitely I would encourage you to do so. In our latest hardware, the third generation Gigasmart module for HC1, we actually integrated the Threat Insight sensor into that platform. So now you can, it makes it a lot easier for you as an IT person to manage this whole thing from within FM. Anyway, with that, I see one question.
That's a really, really great question.
So
Mark's question is, with payloads going encrypted, what's the value of packets? And I've actually even been challenged on that the investment that we have we're a riverbed shop, and so what is the value of our riverbed investment in a world that's not only encrypted but getting more encrypted? And so I'll give it a first shot here, and then maybe Stefan can add color. For us, a lot of the value that we see with our network visibility from a troubleshooting perspective actually is in the header, and so that's non-encrypted. And then sometimes for encryption itself, we see problems actually in a negotiation where some of the handshaky stuff is done in clear. And so the answer is there is absolutely still value in packet visibility and knowing your TCP and using that as a basis for doing troubleshooting, even in a world where the contents are more encrypted. And for Shell, we're actually headed towards, people are talking zero trust models and things like that. But even in a world of zero trust and SD-WAN, TCP is TCP is TCP. And that's where a lot of the snakes lie, especially in a global enterprise. And so, it gets more challenging, certainly for the content side of things, but the mechanics of how boxes talk to each other, those challenges are very much the same, and in some senses are getting more complex, where the value of intelligence in the network is even more valuable now than ever.
Yeah, and the alternative, Dave, is that we go after the client as well, right? So every once in a while, we enable, SSL session key dumping on clients. So we get the session key from the client, and then you can still decrypt whatever the client sent over the network if you grab it halfway on a Riverbed appliance. And that's what we
So Mark gets a smiley face. That's the one gutsy question. Good job, Mark.
All right. Okay, guys, we're top of the hour, and I know David needs to join the session right after this. So we're gonna close the session. But again, if you have any questions that comes to mind later on, Gigamart community is the best place to go. Thank you again.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.